Hi, I'm Sam and I live in Norfolk with my wife Susie and son Josh. And Susie and I are missional listeners with Rural Ministries, and I'm delighted to be sharing on our behalf what pushing out into the deep has meant for us and the joy that it's given us. Just by way of brief background, we moved here 9 years ago so I could be minister in an established church. But 3 years ago, in the spring of 2019, we both felt God speaking to us about leaving that role in that church. And as he was saying to leave ministry in that established church, we also felt him say to stay in the area. And as he said that, we felt he was calling us to stay and be more missional, particularly with families and young adults here. And it's been an amazing journey of trusting him for the way ahead. And actually pushing out into the deep for us has meant pushing deeper into our relationship with God and who he is and actually what he thinks of us. But there have been a few key things along the way that we wanted to share, though there are lots more stories we could share in a lot more depth. We'll keep it short. But first of all, pushing out into the deep has meant for us leaving and stepping away from security in a very practical sense. When we gave our notice at the church, 3-month notice, we had nothing in place, no income. Our only income at the time was from the stipend, and no housing. Our housing was provided for by the church in the form of a manse. And actually God had to answer those and provide those things for us as we stepped ahead. And the amazing thing was, by the time we finished at the church 3 months later, nearly all the money for our income for the first year had either been pledged or had been given. And it was just a wonderful encouragement. And we've continued to see God providing for us through part-time jobs and other work as well over the last 2 years. But then also, God provided a home for us. And we live in an area where there are lots of second homes, lots of holiday lets, and there's very few rentals on the market, and they're expensive. But God, amazingly, just a few weeks before we finished at the church, spoke to Susie on the way to school to knock on a farmer's door because she'd seen 2 houses being built on his farmyard. And she knocked on his door, and he took her over straight away to see one of them, which was still a shell and being built, and basically said, yeah, you can rent it. So 3 months later, or 2 months later, just before the pandemic began and just on the deadline of when we had to be out the manse, the work was finished and we could move into this brand new home on this farmyard in a beautiful place. And you know, stepping away from those securities has meant that actually we're finding a new security in God, and just that he's watching over us and he cares for us as a father. But then secondly, we've also had to step away from our past experience and practices in ministry and a different way of doing life into a new way of doing life. And that's been interesting and challenging on a personal level, but it's also been interesting with different people's reactions that know us as we've shared our journey with them, and lots of positive things and encouragement, but also from unexpected places, sometimes criticism or negative comments, and worry that we're throwing away our lives and career, and even that we might be putting our son in jeopardy by giving up that income and housing. But actually God has been on a real journey with us in that we're learning to find new ways of doing things and a new path that God's guiding us on and leading us in on a day-to-day basis sometimes. And that actually we're learning to trust him more and to listen to him more. And actually where we lack that affirmation from people, we feel that God is giving us that affirmation, that more and more actually we know his affirmation for us and what we're doing. And that's been a real joy as well, just hearing God the Father's affirmation for us more clearly. And we have to say that through the whole experience, there's just been this sense of actually, we've both had this general feeling that though there are occasional worries, God is holding us. And so pushing out into the deep for us has actually meant pushing deeper into God and who he is and what he thinks of us. And it's just been a wonderful experience, and so pleased to be able to share just some of that with you today.